There is never any good or bad. If everyone's acting in hukum, is there any good or bad? Well, hukum-e andar sab ko, bahar hukum na koi. That statement makes it very clear, and this is why we get this statement so early in Gurbani, so early in Japji Sahib, that you can never see something as good or bad, because good or bad is simply a reflection of how things affect you. We see something as good when it positively impacts us in our life, what we think to be positive, because we think gaining things are positive. And we see something as bad when something negatively impacts our life, which means in some way someone's taking something away from us. But in reality, there is no such thing as good or bad. And every time we're faced with this idea of good and bad, people continuously come up with these scenarios around, well, what about child abuse and what about animals being tortured? Surely there are some things that are bad in the world. Well, there is nothing that's good or bad. There is simply our perception of reality. Yes, people are being tortured. Yes, people are being completely abused in the world. The ego is doing that. We all have that ability to behave like that. Every single one of us has the ability to be a terrible person. Every single one of us needs only a few things to happen and the worst comes out in us. Does that make it good or bad, or does that simply make the person who's doing that completely incapable of understanding or viewing the world in a compassionate way? Now, of course, we would look at the victim and say that's a terrible thing happening to that victim. But again, that victim is only going to feel like a victim as long as they're not able to accept reality as it is. Now, let's take the examples that the Gurus have laid out in our own history. Did Guru Arjan Dev Ji see his own torture and his own victimization as the rest of the world would have seen it? Did he see it as good or bad? Did he see himself as a victim? Or did he see everything as just divine will? I think in today's modern history, I think we've completely sugar-coated how much torture the Gurus have been through. But if only we were there, might we have actually seen the absolute atrocities that the Gurus and the closest Gurus' associates were put through. I mean, people were burnt alive. People, while they were alive, were having their arms and their legs and their heads sawn off. Mothers were having their children cut up in front of them and put around their necks. We cannot imagine the torture that the great Sikhs of our history have been through, yet they knew not to see that as good or bad, because they've transcended the individual who is affected by good or bad. When you transcend the individual, then there is no victim left. So yes, there are terrible things happening to young children and to innocent people and to innocent animals and to innocent beings all over the world. But the Guru has given us coping mechanisms, and we can only pray that we have those kind of coping mechanisms so that we can deal with the circumstances that life may or may not throw at us, may or may not throw at our children and our parents, at our loved ones. We can only pray to have that understanding, that wisdom of the Guru. That's all we have. So good or bad is really very subjective. And it's all based on the individual, the I that says, I don't want this to happen. When you can accept everything that is happening, not I accept what God is doing to me, but I accept that the universe is doing what it must do to the universe. You take yourself completely away from the scenario. That is how Guru Arjan Dev Ji is able to say, Tera kiya meetha lage. Whatever is happening is sweet to me. Guruji doesn't even say it's good or bad. Guruji says, this is beautiful, this is tasty, this is lovely. Har naam padarat Nanak mange. Nanak is asking for naam. Nanak is asking to stay in this wisdom, the treasure of this wisdom. That's the only thing I ask for. Let me continue to stay within this wisdom so that whatever you do, I see as sweet.